If you have been enjoying listening to the stories of entrepreneurs across Edinburgh, then why not subscribe? If you're on YouTube, you can hit the red button down below and hit the bell to get notifications. Or if you're listening on Spotify or Apple, then subscribe to the podcast. We hope you enjoy the show. Josh, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So give us a snapshot. Who you are, what you do.
So I'm Josh Littlejohn. I'm consider myself an entrepreneur, or probably I would call it a social entrepreneur. I love trying to set up businesses, bring my ideas to life, basically. But typically, I've been motivated since I've been working in business over the last 13, 14 years in trying to create social impact. So co-founded Social Bite, and that's become a reasonably big charity now, with a focus on trying to tackle homelessness in Scotland and also further afield as well. So that's kind of been my big focus over the last 12 years.
Yeah, amazing. And you got a whole bunch of other interesting things, which I'm sure we'll get into. But let's go back to the beginning. How did you end up in all this? Like, what was school like? Did that influence, where you ended up?
Yeah, so I grew up near Stirling, just quite close to Blair Drummond Safari Park. My parents were both very entrepreneurial. They set up a restaurant called Littlejohn's, and that became a successful chain of restaurants, which my mum and dad sold when I was just 2 years old. So I grew up in what I would consider to be relatively really privileged circumstances. Always had so much support, so much love, that kind of undoubtedly gave me amazing cards when I went to find my way in the world. I had a good toolbox to work from. But I think the other thing that kind of influenced me, as well as growing up in that kind of entrepreneurial environment, was that we went to a state school, and I always felt like our family was kind of a bit of a rich family, really, which, my parents say is not really the case, really. They're much more wealthy families than ours there, but that's kind of how I felt as a teenager, and I was always really mortified by that. If my dad had a fancy car and he wanted to drop me at school, I'd make him park round the block and walk in, because I just, didn't want to be different from everyone else. So I think when it came to me embarking on an entrepreneurial path later in life, it just never really was the natural thing to try and make lots of money, because I'd always spent my whole adolescence trying to distance myself from money or wealth. When I kind of discovered more of a social enterprise, socially motivated business model, it really kind of aligned with who I felt I identified with as a person, and made me really motivated to pursue that particular path. Yeah.
Amazing. And so then what next? Once school was done, you went and studied at uni, and how was that? Yeah. What did you do there?
I went to Edinburgh Uni and studied politics and economics. And had a great time at uni. I changed course after first year. I originally did English, so I was at Edinburgh Uni for about 5 years. It's like with most students. I think I went into it like really politically idealistic and really, I was quite a politically charged young guy. And then over the course of 5 years, just kind of got drunk basically for 5 years. The political idealism sort of dissipated because I was just in the pub the whole time. And but made loads of amazing friends, and it gives you that bit of time to grow and before you have to sort of get into the world of work. So when I left university, my original ambition was never to be an entrepreneur. I never really had any aspiration to set up my own business. My original aspiration was actually to get a job as a civil servant, believe it or not. So I applied for. I wanted to be. I thought myself maybe I could be like an economist, advising the government or advising developing nations, or maybe I might work for the UN or something in the future. So I did like the grad scheme application process to work for the government as a civil servant, as an economist, and it was a 6-month long application process, and you had to go to London and do psychometric tests and all these different interviews and stuff. And I got to the end of that process, and I just got a single sentence email that said, "Very sorry, you've not been successful. You didn't get the job." So looking back now, I think, I dodged a bullet massively. I, I would have got sacked really quickly if I was a civil servant. I just would have probably felt too caged, considering like what I've gone on to do. So when I felt a bit deflated by that, it kind of felt like a natural decision rather than to go through that process again and apply for another grad scheme job or something. I couldn't really think of much worse than working in a corporate or something. Like, just not what I wanted to do. So I thought, you know what, maybe I'll try and set up my own business. And at the time, I didn't have any reference point for a social enterprise or anything like that. And, your definition of business largely in our society is trying to maximize profits and stuff. So when I decided to set up my own business, I set up an events company. I just had quite a traditional focus of trying to organize different events, make a profit. Didn't really have much of a social aspiration underpinning it. So that was kind of my start in entrepreneurship, and I started to organize different events basically. So they started really small. It started with a little fashion show. This was in 2008 that I put on during the Edinburgh Festival, and I called it the Festival Fashion Show. I booked out Shanghai nightclub. Don't know if it's still called Shanghai, but I think it was below Le Monde. And so I booked out that at like 7 o'clock and recruited models, went to the shops in the high street to get clothes and donated for the different rounds. Went and flyered on the Royal Mile to say Festival Fashion Show, and ended up selling 300 tickets. And it was like this good little thing, and I made like £3,000. And I was just like, whoa, this is amazing. Like, it was such a buzz to like just have an idea and then see it come to life. And my phone was ringing nonstop and busy organising it all. And since then, you just really got the bug for entrepreneurship and that process of having an idea and trying to bring it to life. And the events, gradually got more and more ambitious as the years went on, and that kind of was the start of my entrepreneurship journey.
And so we definitely want to hear about how the kind of events got bigger. But where did that idea come from? I mean, of all the things that you could have done, you said, right, I'm going to do...
The fashion show.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think I was 21 at the time and I was single, and I thought like it might be a good way to try and meet a girlfriend if I was going to try and recruit models for this fashion show. So
great idea.
That was kind of probably my primary motivation. But then, as I say, kind of caught the bug for it.
Right.
Yeah.
So what did progression look like then in terms of events?
Well,
was
basically,
it music?
then I started to think, most events you put on, like if it's music or whatever, you have to pay for the act, you have to pay for the attraction, and then you have to try and pay for the venue and stuff, and then you have to try and sell tickets basically, and that was kind of the model. And I thought, like, what other kind of events are there that sound a bit more economically better than that? And I started to think about exhibitions, because I thought the main attraction to an exhibition is the stand holders who exhibit their goods or whatever they're exhibiting, and they pay you, and then you also sell tickets on top of that. So just kind of instinctively thought exhibitions seemed like a good move. So I started to try and put on exhibitions. So I did one in the weekend before Christmas. I booked out the Royal Concert Halls in Glasgow, and I called it Scotland's Christmas Fair, and went out to gift companies and any company that might want to try and sell Christmas related stuff, and sold them stands. And then, I think we did with free tickets, and the idea was it was in the heart of Glasgow, and we were trying to just get people in. And again, it was quite successful in terms of the finances of it. We struggled a bit to get people through the door, so I had quite a lot of pretty unhappy stall holders because we didn't quite deliver on our plan to get people actually in there to the extent what we hoped. But it was a successful kind of thing. And then I thought, all right, what other kind of exhibitions can we do? And at the time, there was two really big snow sports exhibitions in England, one in Birmingham, one in London. And I thought, Scotland doesn't have one. Maybe we could do a snow sports exhibition. So then I took another big gamble and booked out the SECC exhibition hall, which I think was like a 30 grand contract from memory, and created a website, called it Scotland Ski and Snowboard Show, and started phoning up companies in the snow sports industry and saying, look, would you like to exhibit? Most of them said no. So I was like, so that was a bit of a crash course in how to sell. Because I was literally, would go bankrupt basically if I didn't sell these stands. And there was times where it got really hairy that first year, and I was phoning up like bankruptcy hotlines and getting advice and all that stuff. It really went to the wire, and ended up getting a bridging loan from the Royal Bank who banked with us. And we managed to put the event on, and it was pretty much a good event, and that kind of gave us a foundation, and we built that up the next year and made, I think it was about £50,000 profit from the next year off it. So that was the exhibitions, and then I've done the Scotland's Christmas Fair, done Scotland's Ski and Snowboard Show. So I kind of thought, if you call something Scotland's, then it sounds like quite official. So by this point, I'd got a bit of a passion for entrepreneurship and business. So I decided to try and create a business awards ceremony, and I called it the Scottish Business Awards. So that was kind of the first really successful event that we did, where we managed to get lots of people in the business community in Edinburgh and Scotland coming to it. And that's kind of how we managed to engage with a lot of the high profile people that subsequently ended up coming to Social Bite, because they came to speak at this dinner. So the first speaker was Bob Geldof, and then it progressed to Bill Clinton and Richard Branson and George Clooney and Leonardo DiCaprio. So that dinner kind of took off, basically.
So wait a minute then. So go back to the so you're learning at this point how to sell. So you're picking up the phones. So how did you get Bob Geldof, Clinton, and all the rest of the guys? Was that a phone call? Did you cold call them?
Bill Clinton was the big leap, really. And that was kind of, it was 2013. And literally, it wasn't even a cold call. It was like, somehow the idea dawned on me. Because the first event was really successful. Had 800 people attend at the EICC. We booked Bob Geldof to speak, and everyone had a really good night. So we're thinking, who could we get next to be a speaker? And I don't know where the idea came from, but I thought, well, maybe we could try Bill Clinton. So I Googled Bill Clinton, basically, and I found the Clinton Foundation. And then you click the contact page, and it was one of these contact boxes where it's not even an email address and a phone number. It's just like a contact box that you type into. So I just thought, oh, here goes nothing. We're doing this event, Scottish Business Awards. Would you be interested in coming to speak? And to my surprise, a few days later, I got an email from someone at the Clinton Foundation asking me some questions and saying, what's the event? Give us some details, so on and so forth. And they basically came back and said, look, you could get him to speak, but he speaks at events in exchange for a really significant donation to the Clinton Foundation, basically. So I was kind of thinking, how could we afford that? It was basically, from memory, it was about $210,000, which was a fairly big gamble to take. But it kind of worked out, with Bill Clinton's name, how many tables could we possibly sell? How much could we sell the tables for? And I thought, I think we can just about cover that. So kind of took a gamble, basically, and then phoned up anyone that was at the first dinner and said, look, we booked Bill Clinton, but we've got these deposits to pay on a donation to the Clinton Foundation. Would you buy a table and pay for it really quickly? And enough people said, yeah, definitely. So we managed to sell lots of tables quite quickly, and that kind of, it all took off. And he came over and spoke at the dinner, and it was a bit of a mad experience with like the Secret Service arriving at Edinburgh Airport in a motorcade, coming out from the airport and all this like crazy stuff. And I was about 24, and I was like, whoa, I can't believe this came true.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So it kind of starts to give you a bit of confidence in your ability to make things happen and bring ideas to life when something pretty far-fetched materializes and you're there to see it play out. It was quite a cool sort of formative experience for me.
Unbelievable.
Did you realize at the time, like, how much of a kind of big deal it was? To like that, to commit to 200 grand's worth of cost on, that it's
the risk less so, because, like I said, I wasn't motivated by money and I wasn't motivated by profit from the dinner. So it wasn't so much an altruistic motivation, but it was more motivated by like life experience. So I kind of thought, wow, like I could do this and that would be an amazing life experience. And I didn't fully weigh up the downsides or whatever. It was kind of just young, naive, risk-taking really. And, I think that's the thing that I learned at that moment is about risk-taking in business, is that, if you go into a casino and you put 200 grand on red or black, then you've got like a 50% chance. And once your chips are on the table, then you're just with the gods of luck, whether you're going to double your money or lose it all. But in business, every single day, every time you pick up the phone and sell a table, every single move you make, you can tilt those odds more and more and more in your favor. So whilst it might have seemed like a really high risk thing at the point of committing to it, you kind of learn that, you've got the powers in your hands basically to make it pay off. So, it kind of gave me certainly a healthy approach to risk. Some people might call it unhealthily risky, but, it was kind of really set the dinner apart and gave it a platform. And then that dinner, by this point we'd set up Social Bite. So we were doing this Clinton. We had one little cafe on Rose Street. So it was kind of a mad thing where, most of the days in the cafe making sandwiches and coffees. And then, on the flip side, you're having calls with Bill Clinton's office about the Secret Service and logistics and all the rest of it. But the dinner went on to become Social Bite's key fundraising event for 5 years, basically. So the dinner funded Social Bite to go from 1 cafe to 5, and all the kind of growth that we were able to achieve was all fueled by this dinner, basically.
And so what was the spark then that started Social Bite?
So like I say, I was always, when I was younger, really quite socially motivated, politically motivated. So by this point, I was running these events, and I was loving entrepreneurship. I was loving having an idea and trying to work to bring it to life. And that process of idea to seeing it play out in reality was just the thing that I was really hooked on. But I just felt a degree of hollowness because, nothing I was doing really had a social underpinning or aspiration. So I was kind of like trying to grab for something that I felt like more closely aligned with who I was as a person, and something that I could kind of express that entrepreneurial creativity, but for the more of a social motivation. So I stumbled across a book by a guy called Professor Muhammad Yunus back at this was like in 2011, a few years into my events business. And this book, Professor Yunus, the guy that lives in Bangladesh, he won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2006. He set up something called Grameen Bank, which was basically a bank that lends money to poor rural women. And he won the Nobel Peace Prize for that. And in this book, he described an idea that he called a social business. So he talked about how in his native Bangladesh, he'd set up over 50 different companies, but he never owned a single share in any company that he'd ever created. And some of them went on to become billion-dollar companies, like he owned the phone network in Bangladesh and stuff, but he never owned a single share. So his motivation every time to set up this business is because he kept seeing social challenges in Bangladesh, which is obviously a really poor country. And his solution was never to set up a kind of more traditional charity thing. It was always to try and create a business format to tackle a particular challenge, because he felt it was more self-propelling and more sustainable and more impactful. So I read that, I was like, whoa, this is the idea for me. It perfectly aligns like entrepreneurship with a social aspiration. So I reached out to Professor Yunus and wrote off to him, and it's kind of a recurring theme in my story is just like writing off to people and being quite persistent and stuff. Yeah. So I ended up going to visit him in Bangladesh in October of 2011, and we got a little tour around some of his social businesses and stuff. This was myself and Alice at the time, and we just thought, wow, this is such an inspiring concept. Let's try and go back to Scotland and create our own social business. So that was kind of the origins of it. And at the time of the events company, I had a little office on George Street, and I used to go out, I had a couple of team members, we used to go out and get a sandwich at Pret and a coffee at Starbucks and stuff. So we thought maybe we could open a sandwich shop or kind of coffee shop that had a social aspiration. Then customers, office workers and stuff, they tend to be, you get in the same patterns, you go to the same place quite frequently, so maybe they would come to us. So that kind of became the original thinking. But then the idea didn't have anything to do with homelessness. So the original social concept was to try and make a profit, and then we'd chosen 3 charities to distribute the profits to. So the homelessness was just not part of it at all. So we opened this cafe. That was the idea, try and make a profit. We had the 3 charities on the wall we were going to give the profits to. And there was this young guy who was 19 years old. His name was Pete. He was homeless, and he was selling the Big History magazine on the street corner of Rose Street, just basically outside the front door of the cafe. And he came in after 2 weeks, and he was kind of hanging around by the counter. And he was basically sort of plucking up the courage to ask us if he could have a job. And we sort of thought, do you know what, if we're trying to make a social impact, then that's something we can do that would make a pretty big impact straight away. So we gave him a job part-time, and that kind of how the whole journey on homelessness began. So if it wasn't for that young man coming to ask us for a job, then it probably would have never ended up on the path it did.
It's quite interesting. I like how that's worked. He plucked up the courage to ask you in the same way as you were plucking up courage to kind of reach out to other people. Yeah. Can I just go back on the book as well? So so Professor Yunus, what got that book into your hands in the first place?
Can't remember.
Right.
Can't remember.
Okay.
Some kind of serendipitous thing, stumbled across it.
Right.
Of some way. I can't,
wow.
Yeah, can't actually remember. But
Right.
I just remember stumbling across it and just feeling this massive sense of alignment of like, whoa, this is...
Well, as you turn the pages,
yeah,
you're like,
just like, this is it for
Yeah.
me. This is the idea for me. This is because I was grasping for something, and then I was like, this is something I can hold on to.
yeah.
So, and it just kind of, I've just found trying to create that sort of alternative business model with a social aspiration. I just found that really a motivating.
But as I'm listening to you as well, I just like this idea of, you had a feeling you were looking for something, and you kept that kind of search kind of going, and you eventually found it. And I quite like that.
Well, I think all of us have a sense of who we are as people. We have a sense of our identity that we probably have from quite a young age. And I think the best thing you can do in life, I think, whatever it is to try and just reach that sense of alignment with who you are. And I think loads of people don't find that because they just end up in a job or a path and they feel unaligned. And I just feel so lucky that, like, when I stumbled across that, and we've been so fortunate, there's been so many miracles along the way that kept Social Bite alive and kept the whole thing for going on the journey it did. But yeah, I just feel really lucky that I managed to kind of get my life onto a path that I felt really aligned with. And I think once you do that, you can become quite unstoppable, because it's not work to you then. You're not working. You just, who you are and what you do are totally matched. And then you can get, and you're competing with people that have got jobs, and they get to 5 o'clock and think, but you don't feel like that because you just, you're totally aligned with who you are and what you do. So that's my kind of big advice to anyone really, as they're trying to think about what they want to do in the world, is just try and tune into your identity and find something that aligns with it, and you won't work a day in your life really.
And you mentioned Alice as well, so because I'm interested as well as we kind of keep on kind of packing the journey, this idea of collaboration with people. So can you talk a little bit about maybe the collaboration with Alice, and maybe lead us on to other things that you've done with other people?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've generally taken a really collaborative approach along the way. So Alice used to work with me. I first met Alice, she came and worked for my events company, basically. So she was helping me with these exhibitions and the business awards and all these different events. And then we got into a relationship, and then as I say, we went to Bangladesh together, and we sort of co-founded Social Bite together. So that was kind of the origins. And Alice was really critical to the success of Social Bite, over the many years, but particularly those early years. She took a lot on her young shoulders to help it succeed and help it grow. And yeah, like you say, there's been loads of other collaborations. People I've worked with, like my friend Alan. He was working with me on the Scottish Business Awards event, and he came up with this idea of Brewgooder, and could we create a beer company to try and raise funds to support clean water projects. So that was something I helped Alan to get off the ground, and that's kind of gone from strength to strength under his leadership ever since. So yeah, I'd love to kind of collaborate wherever possible.
And so what? So again, we're kind of on a bit of a timeline. We're moving through here. So the Social Bite, five stores, and then what was next?
Well, basically, I think a big turning point for Social Bite is we were doing these business awards events, and we were looking for our next speaker. This was in 2015, and we were looking for a speaker that had an affiliation with a charity. Because we were able to make a donation to a particular speaker's charity through the Business Awards event. And someone said, what about George Clooney? And we found he had a charity, was co-founded based in Sudan, about human rights in Sudan. And so we reached out via that charity, and we said, we've had previous speakers of Bob Geldof and Bill Clinton and Richard Branson. Would George be interested in coming and speaking at this event? And we'd be able to make a donation to your charity through our awards. So when they started to engage with that, and it looked like it might be possible that he would come, then we started to say, look, we've also got this little thing called Social Bite. It's a little kind of cafe. We help homeless people through offering jobs. And by this point, we were offering quite a lot of free food in the cafes through a kind of pay it forward mechanism. And I said, if George comes, do you think he'd be open to coming into the cafe for 10 minutes? And to my surprise, they said yes. So yeah, by the time he came, it was kind of obviously just pandemonium on Rose Street. It was like one of those It's like that scene from the movie Notting Hill where the guy opens his door and it's just hundreds of paparazzi. About 600 women arrived at like 6 a.m. Just to camp out and to catch a glimpse of him. And that kind of suddenly took Social Bite from a position of pretty much no one ever really hearing about us or knowing much about what we did, to suddenly being on the front page of every national newspaper. It was literally one of the news items on the BBC News at 6. It was like, bong, George Clooney eats a sandwich, basically was the story. And, I even had cousins in South Africa that were phoning me up saying, we've just seen you on the South African news with George Clooney. It kind of just suddenly gave our tiny little social enterprise this big platform, and we've been able to kind of build on that to be a bit more ambitious with our projects and our fundraising and our campaigning on the homeless issue. So it was a big turning point for us.
Were you quite strategic with like the PR element of it?
Yeah.
Was
definitely.
that, it was very much like, how do we leverage this?
Definitely, yeah. Because the business awards became less of the story. That wasn't really how it was PR'd. As far as it was PR'd, it was, George Clooney flies all the way across the world just to have a sandwich, basically, to come in this little cafe. And that's what made it such a compelling story, because it was kind of the unusual nature of this Hollywood megastar.
Well, that's my understanding.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about the business awards.
Exactly,
He was actually here to do that.
That was the primary focus of the invitation. And then, we were able to sort of tie it in to Social Bite by that time. And we did the same thing a year later with Leonardo DiCaprio. So again, it was a bit like a totally mad few years that when you're in the middle of it, you still realize how mad it is, but it's only, I suppose, with the benefit of hindsight that you realize just quite how mad it was. But yeah, it was transformative for Social Bite, really, because suddenly we had all these opportunities to be much more ambitious in what we were trying to do.
And are you getting any time with these people then when they come over? Yeah, so you're actually having one-on-one time with...
Yeah. We're with them for the whole day, basically. Because we had them for the day, so they came into the cafe. They did a private lunch for us. So George Clooney, we did it in Tiger Lily, so David Wither organised a lunch for like 20 people, which were like our top supporters, basically, that could come to this lunch. And we had little meetings with him, with different supporters and different people through the day. And then we got into the business awards in the evening. And Chris Evans from the radio came up and did the interview and stuff. So it was, and you're in the green room with them before and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, it was a mad experience. And Bill Clinton, we had a dinner with him the night before. Tom Hunter emailed me the night before and said, I'm doing a little dinner in the Balmoral with Bill Clinton. Would you like to come along? And so I found myself at a table with about 8 people, and Bill Clinton's there and I'm here in the Balmoral. And again, I was about 24. And basically I had put myself forward to interview Bill Clinton at the awards the next night. So I remember that came about. I was driving one of our like sandwich delivery vans, and it was like this old van. It broke down, and it was on the hard shoulder of some motorway in this broken down sandwich van. And I had a call scheduled with Bill Clinton's office around all the logistics and stuff, and they were running through all the questions of the event and stuff. And he said, "Who's going to introduce him?" And I said, "Who's going to interview him?" And I said, "Oh, do I choose that? Do I?" And they, I said, "Oh, that'll be me. Then I'll do that." So they're like, "Okay, that's fine." So I was like, "Oh," so I got to do that. So basically, it was the year of the Scottish independence referendum. When he came in, we had Alex Salmond and Nicola Sturgeon and stuff in the room. And I just thought, this is like the biggest political question. Everyone in the country's talking about it, and we've got this big political figure. So you had to submit your questions in advance. So one of my questions was, "What's your view on the Scottish independence thing?" And his team came back and said, "Right, these questions are approved. This one's not. He's not wading into like local politics." So I was like, that's a bit of a bummer, because I was really nervous about doing the interview, and I thought that would win the audience over really quickly, asking like a real zinger of a question. So anyway, when I found myself at this little dinner at the Balmoral, and I sat next to him, then he didn't know who I was, or that I had organised the event, or I was going to be interviewing him. So he was talking away to the table. And at some point in the dinner, he said, "Oh, they're wanting to ask me about the Scottish independence stuff tomorrow, and because I just don't think I should do it." Stuff. So I sort of said, "Oh, excuse me, it's actually me that was wanting to ask that, and I just feel, it's like such a big political issue, and I think people in the room will be really interested." And he goes, you know what, son, you just go ahead and ask me. So his PR team got approved. So that became the first question on the night. And you just sort of could hear the audible gasps in the room as it was asked and stuff. And then I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was kind of just a real politician's answer, like, perfectly down the middle sort of thing. So,
no answer. Yeah.
And how did it feel then, 24-year-old Josh sitting at the table with former President of the United States?
Yeah, again, like for me, I suppose it was just, a mad, amazing kind of experience, but it's just one that it really is formative in the sense it just gives you the belief that we all have the ability to kind of manifest our ideas into reality, and when something like that happens and it's there and you're part in that experience, then it kind of just really gives you a lot of confidence going forward, whatever the ideas were, whether it was Social Bite, building the villages, or doing the sleep outs, or doing the future business awards, or whatever the particular thing was. You kind of just get more and more robust in your mindset of like, we can make this happen if we work hard at it and we visualize it and we can do it, sort of thing. So I think it was kind of formative in that sense.
And how have you juggled then the pull of entrepreneurship and the financial wins of that, along with this giving back? And how have you found that balance for yourself? Because you've done some cool things, you've done some great events, you've raised a lot of money, and I'm sure you've made plenty of profit in that as well. So how do you kind of then land with the experience of your parents and all of that? Like, where does that land with you, and how do you kind of deal with it?
I mean, I think for the vast majority of my career, like I was pretty tunnel visioned on not thinking about money for myself, which probably in many times was not sensible, because like I screwed up my credit rating for ages, and had loads of personal debts and all this stuff like in the early days, because there was no money really going around. And the business awards, we were just putting all the profit basically into expanding Social Bite, basically. So just tunnel visioned on it. I didn't really stop to think about myself really. And I think that was been a big strength of us achieving what we achieved, just having that kind of real single-minded vision of just trying to not have that profit motivation, but just kind of keep making decisions around the social impact. But obviously, as you get a bit older, like I've got a wife, now got married a couple of years ago, got an 18-month-old baby. So, your mindset does start to change a bit as you get a little bit older, and you start to think it's important to have a good balance in life. So, we kind of try and implement a good balance within Social Bite in terms of salary structures and stuff. We've got a rule that the person at the top can never earn more than 7 times the person at the bottom. So that kind of keeps, we think, a fair balance also around recruitment. If we're trying to recruit senior people, it gives us a good kind of parameter to work within. And then I'm also keen to start to think about other little businesses I can set up in addition to Social Bite and stuff. And Social Bite still to be my main passion and my main focus, but me to continue being entrepreneurial and exploring some other things as well. So yeah, just trying to get the balance right, basically.
Yeah, I mean, that's the curse, right, of an entrepreneurial mind. Like you can't sit still. It's like you do something and you get it to a point, and actually you're probably not the right person to keep it going.
100%.
Because you're the chaos that created it, but it's not the chaos to run it.
Yeah, exactly. I think we've been really lucky within Social Bite to get a really great management team and people that really take on the day-to-day operations and management of the organization. And I'm in a fortunate position to be able to focus on the areas I'm passionate about and good at, and like basically new projects, trying to bring things to life from scratch, or the fundraising element. But I think that there's been times when I've just found myself, because as the charity, like Social Bite is like a £6 million roughly turnover charity, so it's quite a big organization. There's quite a lot of structure, boards, committees, so on and so forth. So I think as a founder within the charitable sector, it's easy to find yourself at some point no longer an entrepreneur, but basically an employee of a charity that you happen to found. So I think it's trying to operate within that structure, but continue to keep some of the entrepreneurial spirit, which made the organization what it was, kind of thing. And, I think hopefully develop a few other things alongside it and kind of just keep being an entrepreneur, basically, is what kind of I hope to do going forward.
And so what led you on then, Josh, to the world's biggest sleep out then? Where did that idea come from?
Well, basically, we'd been doing these sleep since 2016. So we had this ambition to build this village. Basically, this was our big initiative to try and build a homeless accommodation facility for homeless people. And we managed to get some vacant land from Edinburgh Council, and we were looking to build a little village. We were designing these little wooden 2-bedroom prefabricated homes and a community hub and stuff. And we had to figure out a way to try and raise money to build this village. So I was organising the Scottish Business Awards event for some years. So I'd had a really good network amongst the business community and chief execs and entrepreneurs and stuff who were coming to this dinner. So the original thing was in 2016. We thought maybe we could do like a CEO sleep out. So we managed to get Charlotte Square, and we started to reach out to people that we were connected with in the business community and say, look, we're doing the CEO sleep out. Would you come and sleep out in Charlotte Square? And we ended up with 275 business people came and slept out. Nicola Sturgeon came and gave out bacon rolls in the morning and stuff. Sir Chris Hoy slept out, so that helped add a lot of kudos to it. And we asked those people to raise money. We gave them all a fundraising page, and they raised like £580,000, and that got us well on our way to build the village project. So from there, we thought this sleep out concept's pretty good. Maybe we could try and evolve it and maybe make it a mass participation thing. So we booked out Princess Street Gardens and came up with the event concept that we called Sleep in the Park. So I suppose I was kind of re-engaging with my old experience of events kind of thing and thinking about applying those to fundraising. So we thought, let's try and invite people from all walks of life to come and sleep out in Princess Street Gardens. And it was a December night. And we wrote off to all cross sections of society, basically. And we ended up with 8,000 people signed up to sleep out. And as fate had it, that night turned out to be the coldest night of the whole year, and temperatures dropped to -8 degrees, and everyone just woke up absolutely freezing. But as the temperatures dropped, the funds kind of poured in, and we ended up raising £4 million from that one sleep out. So it was an incredible kind of night, and it just really did shine the national spotlight on the homeless issue. It really led to a lot of political urgency around the issue. And so that was 2017, and then in 2018 we grew it to 4 Scottish cities and did 4 sleep outs. And then as we were coming into 2019, for some reason I can't quite remember the exact logic, but I remember when I was about 14, my little brother won tickets to go and see Bob Geldof's Live 8 concert in Hyde Park. So me and him went down when we were teenagers to watch Live 8, and so that kind of thing sticks with you, I think. So I kind of probably thought, as we're approaching 2019, maybe we could try and create our own kind of Live Aid moment for the homelessness issue, trying to utilising this kind of sleep out concept that we've developed. So we kind of came up with this concept of the world's big sleep out, and we kind of started to lay out the goals of it. And we set a target of trying to stage 50 sleep outs all over the world on the same night, with a target of 50,000 people participating, basically. And we kind of thought maybe we could, you can't think, how'd you start, to do that? But we thought maybe if we could get flagship locations, one in London and one in New York, that would kind of be the foundation of it. So we didn't really know anyone in New York at all, but again, it was just a cold calling, basically. So Googled the New York City parks and found the number for the parks permitting department. I was sat in my flat one night and basically cold called them and sort of pitched them this idea and said, we've done these sleep outs in Scotland. How do we go about applying for a permit for Central Park or one of the New York kind of venues? And the guy said, look, I'll stop you there. He said, that'll be completely impossible to do that in New York. He said, there's time curfews. So the city shuts down events at 11 p.m. He said the NYPD will never sign it off. The city doesn't like to set new precedents. He said, you should just really try a different city if you want to do that. He said you would really need to get the mayor on board, basically. But, other than that, it's impossible. So I hung up the phone and was a bit like, felt probably the dream's over before it begun, but learned over the years not to take no for an answer straight away. So decided to book a little trip out to New York. And I thought, right, I need to try and set up some meetings and see if I can make something happen. So I found this network called the Global Scots Network, which is like a Scottish enterprise run thing. And it's basically like people that live all over the world who have some connection to Scotland. So they might be Scottish, but more often than not, it's like their great-gran was Scottish or something, and they've got that affinity. So I met them and said, look, this is what I'm trying to do. Would you set me up some meetings when I go out? And they said, yeah. So they set me up about 8 different meetings and traveled out there for 3 days and met all these people, pitching them all the idea, had my laptop and I was showing them all a little video from the event in Edinburgh. And most of the meetings were just pretty random and pointless, but I ended up meeting this one guy called Itai Gross, who was like from a big property family in New York. And he said, oh, I can't really help you, but he goes, you should meet my friend Bruce. My friend Bruce could be a good guy for you to meet. So he didn't really elaborate on who Bruce was, but he phoned this guy up and said, right, you've got a meeting with Bruce tomorrow. So I went and met this guy in one of these big New York skyscrapers. And this guy turned out to be a really quite aggressive, pretty energetic New Yorker. And every second word was basically. And so I was kind of pitching him the idea and he literally looks at his watch as I was mid-flow. He's like, Josh, get on with it, Josh. So I was a bit like, getting flustered. And so I got my laptop out, I'll cut to the chase and showed him this video of the Edinburgh sleep out. And he starts to kind of smile as he's watching this video. He goes, I get it. He's like, Josh, this is great in New York. We have to do this in New York. And basically this guy turned out to be the former chief of staff to Mayor Rudy Giuliani. So he goes, I'm going to phone someone in City Hall right now. So he gets out his phone in the meeting and he goes, look, you got to give this guy 10 minutes tomorrow about this homeless thing. And he hangs up the phone and he goes, right, you got a meeting tomorrow in City Hall. So then I was due to fly home that day. So I arrived at City Hall with like my luggage and stuff and go through the security, a bit flustered. And then end up meeting 3 people basically from the mayor's office. And again, pitched them the idea, showed them this video. And they start to say, this is a nice idea. We like this. I said, well, when I first phoned up the permitting department, they said it would be completely impossible. And they said, yeah, it would be a bit difficult, but, maybe a venue that might work, I don't know, would Times Square work for you? And I was like, what? Really? So basically jumped on that, arranged a follow-up trip, had loads of meetings with the NYPD and the Times Square Alliance. And before I knew it, people were bringing out floor plans of Times Square, saying how we could close it down and all this stuff. I was like, what? Oh my God, this could actually happen. And we ended up getting agreement to basically shut down all 4 plazas of Times Square. So from there, we approached Sadiq Khan's office and they said, well, you've got Times Square. And we said, yeah. And they went, oh, we'll give you Trafalgar Square then. So that kind of gave us our 2 iconic locations and we were able to sort of build it up from there. And it ended up happening in 52 cities, 60,000 people slept out all over the world. So it ended up being a success, but it was the most challenging and stressful thing I've ever done. There was so many times just the pressure of it and the stress of it, and we just felt so overwhelming. And so many times I thought this isn't going to work. And I was just really overwhelmed with it all. So I learned a lot about kind of trying to push through adversity and push yourself massively out of your comfort zone, basically. But I don't know if I'd ever undertake anything quite so crazy again. But yeah, one of the things I'm most proud of that we kind of got there and pulled it off.
I can't help but kind of go back to the thing you started with, which is the one line email rejection from the civil service, right? Which you were happy with almost, it spurred you on, and then the rejection that you got from the planning department in New York, which you didn't accept, and I just think this idea of kind of emails or kind of throwing out connections to people has been a real thing for you throughout everything you've done. It's just having the balls to say.
Basically, that's one of the things, I've learned is, if you don't ask, you don't get sort of thing. And sometimes you can prevent yourself from asking the question or putting yourself out there because you just think, oh, that's never going to happen. But, I kind of learned that it's quite often does happen, which is kind of crazy, when it does.
You shared with us your guiding principle, and I know it's quite a famous line. Do you want to just share it?
Yeah, well, like whenever I give a speech, I always kind of give this quote at the end from Steve Jobs, which is a longer quote, but the kind of bit I pulled out was that everything around you that you call life was made up by people that are no smarter than you. And, I suppose that's probably the key thing I've learned over the years is that we all have the power to bring our own ideas into life, based into reality. And I think, until you realize that, then you can just get caught in a trap of just assuming life's just there and you're just going to live in it and not bash into the walls too much. But the minute you realize you can actually influence it and change it, and when you do, other people will buy into that and rally around it, then it's a really empowering thing. And once you kind of learn that and that sinks in, then you'll never be the same again. You kind of forever thinking about how you can make changes and how you can bring things to life. So it's something that kind of probably draws together a lot of things I've learned over the years.
And you know, you've done so much, you've taken advantage of so many opportunities. But earlier on, we were chatting before we started this kind of podcast, and there was almost an opportunity that you missed due to bad personal admin. Do you want to tell us that story?
Yeah. Well, you were asking me about because I got an MBE in 2017 and whether that was a surprise. So I kind of said it was a surprise because I'm a pretty disorganized person in terms of personal admin.
Yeah.
I'm not so bad now because my wife, thankfully, is much more organized than me. But back at that time, in 2017, I don't think I was really opening my personal mail. So just had a big stack of personal mail under the bed or something, being ignored. So I got a bit of a frantic phone call from, the royal family's kind of office or whatever it was, and just saying, we've been trying to reach you. What do you want to accept this or not? I said, accept what? And they said, you've been, offered an MBE. So I said, oh wow, so I haven't opened my mail. So yeah, it was a big honor, and it was something that, because I thought for a minute, like, should I accept it? Because I think because I was working so closely with homeless people who feel really disenfranchised from society and disenfranchised from, the system and the structures that we have, then I did think about, should I accept it or not? But, as soon as I spoke to my mum, she was like, don't be so ridiculous. Of course you're going to accept it. So, it was a cool day, and I dedicated it to the people that Social Bite work with and stuff. So yeah, it was a special kind of thing to receive, and obviously getting it from the Queen as well. It was a special, given she's now passed, and I didn't fully appreciate it at the time, to be honest. But since then, I watched The Crown, and then you see all the prime ministers she's engaged with, and all the incredible journey of her life and stuff. So actually came to appreciate it much more as time's gone on. Huge
achievement. And do you mind if I've got one last question? We can't finish without me asking about the book as well. So tell us about the book and why is it entitled the way it is?
Yeah, so I've released a book last year called Paying It Forward. Yeah. So it's kind of just my entrepreneurial story, really, but I kind of draw out lessons at the end of each chapter of things I've learned and try and really encourage other people in their entrepreneurship journey, try and inspire people. If anyone else feels interested in embarking on a similar path of social enterprise and social entrepreneurship, I try and draw out different lessons and inspirations for them. So basically tells a lot of the same stories I've told you today, as well as lots more, and draws out all the lessons I've learned along the way. So if anyone would like to buy that, it's available at all good booksellers.
Yeah. Congratulations. Yeah. Amazing.
Josh, thank you so much for coming and sharing your story and sharing the achievements and the incredible people you've met. And I'm sure you've not even started. So good luck as you continue to pursue it.
Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thanks.